We appreciate you taking time out. I know you're heading back to Washington in a few minutes today. Where do things stand? I know you would like a 6-month extension.
Well, we have to figure out a way to keep the government functioning. We have to pay our bills as a great nation. We can't become a deadbeat nation. And then it would be ideal if we immediately began bipartisan discussions for a long-term deficit reduction agreement to get our fiscal house in order. That's what we should be focused on right now. But things still seem pretty locked down, and no real resolution in the immediate future.
Speaker Boehner said this weekend that there would be no end to the shutdown and no negotiating on the debt ceiling unless there are negotiations between Democrats and Republicans. Is that going to be possible?
Well, listen, I've initiated a bipartisan group that's meeting on a regular basis to see if there is a path forward, if there is some common ground in order to get this resolved. We have a divided government, and it's going to require some cooperation and compromise in order to get anything accomplished out there. I'm just afraid that the leadership on both sides are so dug in right now that we could seriously risk defaulting on our financial obligations for the first time in our nation's history and lose the full faith and credit of the United States of America. If that were to happen, I'm afraid that the reaction throughout the marketplace would make the last Great Recession look like a picnic. It would be the greatest unforced economic error ever committed on the U.S. economy in the history of our country. So we have a lot of work to do this week. Obviously, October 17th is just around the corner. That's kind of the drop-dead date now that Treasury has given us as far as raising the debt ceiling. So time is ticking here.
We've heard over actually a lot of years now with this Congress that we need to start working together, we need to start cooperating, and that's just not happening. What's the hope that it's suddenly going to start happening in Washington?
Well, I don't know. I think things are so poisonous at the top. Leadership doesn't even talk. And that's why it's incumbent upon people like myself, in order to reach across the aisle, start assembling these groups to sit down and start chatting with each other. And I think there are a lot of moderate, centrist Republicans that want to find some compromise on some of these tough issues. But I do notice that a lot of my Republican colleagues are afraid of that Tea Party primary challenge, and they're always looking over their right shoulder. And within the Tea Party ranks, compromise is a 4-letter word. And so that's really made it difficult in order to move forward in a bipartisan fashion.
And we've heard about that a lot since actually the Tea Party was brought to power in 2010, and there's been no real resolution to that. We've just been going from crisis to crisis. Is there a way to stop this cycle and to finally do what Congress was sent to Washington to do?
Well, I think you get back to structural reforms that we need. We need a new way of drawing the congressional districts of our country. Nonpartisan judicial commissions, not politicians choosing their own voters. Because unfortunately, after the last census, we had much stronger Republican and Democratic seats than ever before, and that leads to the divide. We have too much money in the political system. We've got to figure out a way to clean that out and restore it to the average person again. But no one should discourage members of Congress who are willing to sit down and listen and talk to each other. Because I found in the past when you do that, there is common ground that you can pursue together.
Give the voters out there, the American people, some hope this week that something's going to get done and that we're not going to just keep moving towards this catastrophic.
Well, the group that I've organized, we've got well over 40 Republicans, Democrats that are meeting almost on a daily basis, talking to each other. No one wants to see the U.S. default on our financial obligations. Everyone wants to see the U.S. government back fully functioning again. It's just, how do you get to that spot now in order to allow both sides to save face? And it's really what we're talking about. How do you help the other side save face right now? But if there's one thing that unfortunately unites the leadership in Washington, it's that it's the other guy's fault, and that there's no reason for them to negotiate. So we've got to kind of break through that mentality over the next 10 days.
That's what makes people the most frustrated, the most angry, I think, is that it's about saving face, it's about winning, and it's about losing. How do lawmakers, how do you guys get it in your heads that just do what's good for the American people, what we voted to send you there for?
Well, I think it would also help if people came back home and listened to the people they're supposed to be representing. Because there's a lot of hometown common sense values right back home here that I'm trying to instill out in Washington, where people, if there's a difficulty or conflict, you get together and resolve it. You just don't go to your respective corners and just accuse the other side.
Finally, I think with the gridlock that we've had for a lot of years now, we've had the same leadership in both houses of Congress. Do we need to get rid of that leadership in order for something to change?
Well, there's been a lot of turnover in Congress over the last few election cycles. I was amazed when I discovered that well over a majority of the House members have been serving less than 6 years. And a majority of the U.S. senators are in their first term. So I think we've lost some of the institutional experience of what it takes to get a deal done in order to compromise and reach some resolution. Instead, more and more members are coming to Congress with this my way or no way at all attitude. And that's a recipe for what we're seeing right now. Gridlock, nothing getting done, and possibly a lot of damage occurring to the U.S. economy.
You're leaving literally right after this interview to go back to Washington. What's on your schedule for today?
More meetings, more discussions with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, see if there is a path forward. We have to keep talking to each other because, again, time is not an ally of ours right now. I just hope that we're able to avert, the first default in our nation's history. It would ruin our reputation globally, and it would hurt us at home economically, when what we should be focused on, how do we get this economy fully firing again, creating good paying jobs. A growing economy solves a lot of problems. What's coming out of Washington right now doesn't help that.
Do you think a lot of it for voters is that, or do you experience with voters that they don't know enough about this topic? When I'm sure you get a lot of criticism, you get a lot of people calling you and emailing you. Do people know enough about this topic when they're
Well, it's hard to understand not defaulting on our financial obligations really means, what the market impact would be, what damage it would do to the economy, because we've never done it before. We've come close. The last time, a year and a half ago, of course, we were downgraded by the S&P, and there were economic consequences with that. But just to give you an example, Mark, we're paying over $200 billion a year just on interest payments with our debt. If we default, those interest rates will skyrocket, and we'll soon be at $900 to $1 trillion every year just making interest payments on our national credit card. That's what default would bring to us. And guess what will get squeezed? Education, healthcare, basic research, the seed corn that we need to be planting as a nation to keep us innovative and competitive. Those are the programs that will get wiped out the fastest and leave us, I fear, in a less competitive position globally, which is what we need right now.